Right now, as you're watching this video, somewhere in the Colombian countryside, a 4,000-pound hippo is wading through a river it has absolutely no business being in. There are roughly 200 of them. They are aggressive. They are breeding. They are reshaping an entire ecosystem. And every single one of them exists because a drug lord, a real one, not the fictional genius in a pork pie hat, decided that being the wealthiest criminal in human history wasn't enough. He needed a zoo. But here's the thing. That zoo, those hippos, that entire cascading ecological disaster, it all started with something so small, so mundane, it could have been a scene cut from Breaking Bad for being too boring. A real estate purchase, one piece of land. A cattle ranch in rural Antioquia, bought in 1978 by a man who was, on paper, nobody. That man was Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, and the ranch would become Hacienda Nápoles. And the world would never be the same. Vince Gilligan built Walter White's descent into the drug trade around a single devastating piece of bad luck. A chemistry teacher gets a cancer diagnosis. He has no money, he has a family. He has a skill set that happens to be extraordinarily useful for cooking methamphetamine. And from that one piece of misfortune, an empire grows. It's elegant, it's tragic, it makes for incredible television. But real drug empires don't start with tragic elegance. They start with petty crime and opportunity. Pablo Escobar began as a teenage gravestone thief in Medellin, sanding names off headstones and reselling them. He moved into smuggling cigarettes, then counterfeit lottery tickets, then stealing cars. There was no single moment of transformation. No "I am the one who knocks" speech. Just a slow, grinding escalation driven by one very simple realization: that crime in Colombia in the 1970s was extraordinarily profitable and almost entirely unpunished. Walter White's empire peaked at roughly $80 million, buried in a storage unit. Pablo Escobar, at his height, was earning an estimated $420 million a week. Let that land for a second. A week. Forbes listed him as the 7th richest person on the planet. He was spending $2,500 a month just on rubber bands to hold his cash together. His organization was so flush with money that they wrote off 10% of their earnings annually as losses to rats. Actual rodents eating actual piles of cash in warehouses. Breaking Bad asked, "What would you do with $80 million? Pablo Escobar answered that question and then kept going for about 5,000 more miles. Here's where the comparison becomes almost absurd. Walter White's operation, at its most sophisticated, involved a single industrial laundry facility hiding one underground superlab. It produced roughly 200 pounds of methamphetamine per week. It required a distribution network spanning the American Southwest. And it was, within the world of the show, considered an unprecedented operation. The kind of thing that made the DEA lose sleep. The Medellin cartel, at its peak, was smuggling 15 tons of cocaine into the United States every single day. Not per week, per day. They had a fleet of 15 planes, 6 helicopters, and multiple submarines, actual submarines, purpose-built to move product across the Caribbean. They owned an entire island in the Bahamas, used exclusively as a refueling point. When one of Escobar's planes developed mechanical trouble over the jungles of Darien, they simply abandoned it, along with the 700 kilograms of cocaine on board. It was cheaper to lose the drugs than to retrieve them. Walter White's great logistical triumph was hiding a lab beneath a laundromat. Escobar built a 2,000-square-meter underground bunker complex beneath his ranch with its own ventilation system, escape tunnels, and enough supplies to withstand a siege. And that ranch is where the domino chain takes its wildest turn. That cattle ranch Escobar purchased in 1978 became Hacienda Nápoles, a 7,000-acre compound that functioned as equal parts fortress, theme park, and monument to unchecked ego. Escobar built a private airport. He built a bullfighting ring. He mounted the Piper PA-18 he used for his first cocaine smuggling run above the entrance gate as a trophy. And then he built a zoo, not a modest collection of exotic pets. A full-scale private zoo stocked with animals imported illegally from around the world. Elephants, giraffes, ostriches, kangaroos, rhinoceroses, and 4 hippopotamuses, 3 females and 1 male, smuggled in from a wildlife dealer. In the context of a man earning hundreds of millions of dollars per week, the hippos were an afterthought. A vanity purchase, the kind of impulse buy that happens when money stops having meaning. Walter White hid his cash in a crawl space and eventually a storage locker. He drove a Pontiac Aztek, then upgraded to a Chrysler 300. His gestures of excess were modest by design. The show understood that Walt's power was internal, psychological. Escobar's power was architectural. It was zoological. It was the literal reshaping of geography to match the scale of his ego. And when that ego finally collided with the full weight of the Colombian government, the United States DEA, and a paramilitary group called Los Pepes, the empire collapsed. On December 2, 1993, Escobar was shot dead on a rooftop in Medellin. The cartel fragmented. Hacienda Nápoles was seized. The animals were relocated to Colombian zoos and sanctuaries. All of them, that is, except the hippos. Nobody wanted the hippos. They were too large, too aggressive, too expensive to transport. So the Colombian government made a decision that seemed perfectly reasonable at the time. They left them. 4 hippos on a 7,000-acre ranch with abundant water, no natural predators, year-round tropical warmth, and enough vegetation to sustain an army. It was accidentally the most perfect hippo habitat on Earth. Better in many ways than sub-Saharan Africa, where droughts and lions and territorial competition keep populations in check. In Colombia, the hippos had none of those constraints. They bred. 4 became 8, 8 became 20, 20 became 40. By 2020, estimates put the population at somewhere between 80 and 120. By 2023, the number had climbed past 200. They spread beyond the ranch. They colonized the Magdalena River basin. They wandered into towns. They attacked fishing boats. They displaced native manatees. They altered river chemistry with their waste, triggering algal blooms that killed fish. Scientists now classify them as an invasive species, the largest invasive species on the continent. And all of this, every single hippo, every disrupted ecosystem, every terrified fisherman on the Magdalena, it all traces back to one purchase. One vanity project. One expression of the idea that when you have more money than any single human can comprehend, you build yourself a zoo, because what else is there to do? Breaking Bad ends with Walter White bleeding out on the floor of a meth lab, surrounded by the equipment he loved more than his family. It's a contained ending. A closed loop. Real drug empires don't close loops. They leave hippos. Breaking Bad is often called the most realistic portrayal of the drug trade ever put on television, and in terms of character psychology, that might be true. The show understood the seductive logic of escalation, how each compromise makes the next one easier, how power recalibrates your sense of what's normal. But in terms of sheer scale, the real thing dwarfs the fiction so completely that it becomes almost impossible to dramatize. You can't put $420 million a week on screen and have an audience process it. You can't show a man feeding his cash to rats and losing more money to rodent damage annually than most people earn in a lifetime and have viewers accept it as reality. You definitely can't end your prestige drama with a subplot about invasive hippopotamuses because the audience would assume the writers had lost their minds. And yet that's the reality. The actual drug trade, at its highest levels, was so excessive, so disconnected from anything resembling rational behavior, that it produced consequences no fiction writer would dare invent. Walter White was a brilliant character study in how ordinary men become monsters. Pablo Escobar was a reminder that real monsters don't need character arcs. They just need enough money to stop hearing the word no. There's something deeply revealing about the hippo story beyond its absurdity. It tells us that the consequences of unchecked power are never contained. They ripple outward in directions nobody predicts, long after the powerful person is gone. Walter White died, and his story ended. Pablo Escobar died, and his story mutated into an ecological crisis that will outlast everyone watching this video. The hippos can't be easily removed. They can't be relocated in meaningful numbers. They are, in a very real sense, Escobar's most enduring legacy. more permanent than the billions, more lasting than the violence. A living monument to what happens when one person accumulates so much power that their whims reshape the natural world. If this kind of story is your thing, the strange places where history, pop culture, and sheer human absurdity collide, then stick around. This channel is going to keep pulling at those threads. Subscribing means you won't miss the next one, and honestly, the next one might be even stranger than cocaine hippos. Though that is a high bar.